I'm Haandrikman. I work at GamePoint. GamePoint does multiplayer. I've been doing that for 17 years, synchronous, mostly web-based, have some stuff on mobile nowadays. I run the business development department. This is actually the second time we do this session. And to stop myself from talking too much during these, I'm actually moderating this time, so I'm going to try and shut up. In the panel today, I'll let them introduce themselves. The only one that was on the ticket, which is missing, would be Alfonso from PlaySpace, who had to excuse himself because he hurt himself playing football. Zohar.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zohar. I'm the executive producer at Mytopia. Mytopia is a social gaming company, actually performs as the social arm of 888, which is one of the biggest real money gambling companies in the world. In Mytopia, we are creating casino-oriented games. Most of them are multiplayer. We have the biggest backgammon game in Facebook and mobile called Backgammon Live. We have Governor Poker 3, which we publish in Mytopia. And we have Bingo Island, which is the most veteran bingo game in Facebook and currently on mobile.
Hello, it's nice to be back here in Amsterdam. My name is Jan-Michel Saaksmeier. I worked the last 2 years as a director in BigPoint's live game department. Now I recently changed to the publishing department, so if you have any good games afterwards, come to me. I'm looking for mobile games and browser and client games. So BigPoint has been around for a long time in the free-to-play space. We're producing and now publishing browser games, client games, mobile games, tablet games, so yeah.
Thank you. Is it working? Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Frankel, and I run the business development at Plarium. For those of you who don't know us, Plarium is the largest hardcore game developer on Facebook in terms of revenues. We're known for our strategy series, which includes Stormfall, Total Domination, Sparta, etc. We also have a couple of titles on mobile with our recent release of Stormfall Rise of Balur last January. That's it.
My name is Ardam from Peak Games. I've been leading the marketing and business intelligence department for Peak Games for the last 2.5 years. At Peak Games, we're building up multiplayer synchronous board and card games. We started in Turkey, but quickly expanded into other regions, Europe, US, and now currently holding around 9 million daily active users. We're also building up casual games internationally as well, and it's good to be here with my colleagues in the industry.
Awesome. Just the format, we actually discussed some questions that should be interesting for you that we're going to try to run through in the next 40 minutes or so, and then we'll hopefully, if we have the time, do some audience questions. Okay, to kick it off, 2014 was a good year for multiplayer. A lot of new stuff came out, a lot of multiplayer games moving up the ranks, both on mobile and on the web. So what multiplayer games did you play in 2014, or what caught your eye? Yeah.
I can start. So I'm a bit ashamed. I think in private, after 5 years of absence, I started to play World of Warcraft again.
Yes.
Through their great reactivation campaign, they did a really good job here. And this is something only multiplayer games can do, yeah. And what caught my eye was the second wave of mobile card battler games, like Heroes Charge or Brave Frontier, which are very interesting because they're a little bit niche perhaps, but they have a very high monetization standards there. And yeah, they perform very good.
Actually, I'm not allowing myself to play World of Warcraft because I will never work. I must go for the classic, like Boom Beach was excellent multiplayer game. And also by investigating the casino market, I can recommend some bingo games, but you probably won't play them, and a few slot games, which are becoming social and multiplayer, which are great. Also can definitely recommend Soccer Stars. If you ever played it, very nice PvP. Mostly this.
So this year I played a lot of Hearthstone. I quit about 4 months ago. It's a great game, and the real-time synchronous PvP was, people were skeptical about its success in mobile when it's just launched, and Blizzard proved everyone wrong. I even spent like $100 in the game.
Me as well.
Yeah. Other than that, I play mostly single-player games, so I like Best Fiends from Seriously, and there's one Space Wolf right now I'm playing, which is kind of like XCOM for mobile.
For me, I think Soccer Stars, as my colleague says, it was a really good game that I really liked it, and I really like their style of growing in all the countries at the same time. And apart from that, I think I'm a little bit more traditional, like in Team Fortress player. I've been playing it for the last 2 or 3 years. So yeah, that would be. Apart from that, casual games, I love them. Probably an outlier of the demographics, but yeah.
So do you guys get any inspiration there? I mean, like Hearthstone was big last year. Hearthstone was really big. World of Warcraft, it sucked me back in. Do you get inspiration from what they do in like hardcore multiplayer at all?
Definitely, yeah. You can always abstract features or some things they do and abstract them to casual games as well. So this is nothing that it's only unique for core games.
I think it's very interesting. Once I entered the industry of gaming, I started looking totally different about games. Used to play for fun, but now only playing for to find new features, new ideas, investigate segmentation and approaching and retention mechanism. So I can definitely say that we can definitely learn from other games, mainly big games that have big crews and big data analysts. And you can definitely, I'm enjoying seeing new features and new ideas, how to retain users, how to make the game more viral. Actually, now I'm even enjoying it more than just playing the game.
Our research department is very efficient at going around looking into other games. They would sit and would look for a specific mechanic, for example, invite a friend mechanic, and would examine all the games in similar genre to ours, but also in other genres and other territories, such as Asia, and the best practices they're using. So this is something we do on a frequent basis, and it's also very comfortable to have a dedicated team where when something is interesting for you, you just add that to their timeline, to their pipeline, sorry. And after a month or two, you get a very detailed and comprehensive response.
Well, I think what they do great is like how they like kind of incorporate their community in the way that they're building up the games. So like I can see all the hardcore like type of game developers in there is very good at listening to their users, because they have a very niche, like feedback giving, very precious group of users that guide them how to develop their games. I think this is truly inspiring, and that's what we're lacking in free to play.
So does anybody want to give a real world example of a feature you saw by which you were inspired?
Yeah, sure, I'll pick that up. For example, we are putting a lot of emphasis on our live ops in our games. And one of the core elements of live ops is keeping up the competition between players. Our games are when I say strategy, I mean the type of strategy where you build your base, you accumulate an army, and then you launch an attack against another player, and then you see the results of that battle. So it's not real-time battle management. And events play a big role in our engagement of our players. So one mechanic that we improved over time was the leaderboards. In the beginning, we had no leaderboard, so the first improvement was adding one. But over time, what we came to realize that you need to separate players into various leagues, because you don't want the novice players competing with the big ones. And also, if you have too big a leaderboard, what happens is only the top players are being activated, because the rest don't find it attractive enough to make the effort, or don't believe they can make it in time to the places that get real rewards. So we split the entire audience into small leaderboards. And what that did is allowed for a lot more of competition. And when you look at the top leaderboard, players there are naturally more active in the game. So you see that that specific leaderboard is naturally more activated. We've increased significantly the amount of users participating in events. I think the overall revenues in event rose in about 25%. But what's more interesting is that our overall paying users, not just in events, rose by 10% from this move alone.
I can say that a nice feature that we have learned about in PvP is revenge. When a user loses a fight, if it's a poker match, if it's a backgammon game, if it's something like that, even if in Clash of Clans, when someone destroy your city, the ability to revenge, just add the button, revenge, and increases the amount of games and the session length, and even monetization, as you keep them all going on playing. And when you show, we have learned that when you show the score between, let's say, for example, a backgammon game, when you show the score between two players and you continue showing the scores, if you meet him again, it doesn't matter if you play today or in a week, but you keep showing the score, then the session length and the amount of game increases, and obviously at the end it increases monetization. So learning about what makes the player tick when playing against another player, the ability to revenge, the ability to brag or to share your success, or even to tease the other player by sending him a dead fish as a gift or something like that. Sprinkling water instead of gifting a flower can be something that can push people to be more aggressive when playing PvP, and pushing them to play more and more and more and more.
I can remember a feature it was the best performing feature we built for our farm game, Farmerama, by the time, was based on the Diablo 3 socket system for games. So you have sockets in your weapons, you can put in games, and this is a stacking system. This is very interesting, and we put that feature, abstracted it a little bit down, struck it down in complexity, and used it as a breeding feature in the farming game. And this is the best performing feature we ever built in here, and it's still earning a lot of money for us here. So you should really get inspiration from other core games.
So for most of our games, like they're kind of categorized into different rooms where you can bet different amounts. And in those cases, we've realized that there is an actual inflation in the game that affects the distribution of users in different rooms. So when you have this inflation, you need to take care about that and readjust your room distribution, your room entry bets and exit bets in a way that kind of you kind of are able to match your users in a better way, in a more clever way. Because most of the users would like to win, but we saw that when they win a lot, it really isn't good for them, because they don't have this good experience of challenge. They don't really feel the joy of winning, because they're always like with the competitors that are easy to win. Yeah. So I think that was one of the clever moves that we made at Peak, is like to understand the game economy and readjust the whole room structure, the matchmaking algorithms accordingly, so that people can have enough challenge and enough joy at the same time.
Interesting. So we had a lot of new devices and platforms in 2014, right? The wearables kind of kicked off. Apple Watch is coming out in a couple of months. Microsoft announced the HoloLens. Oculus is picking up. Anybody looking in that space at all?
I can start. This is not a priority thing that we're looking at the moment, because we still believe there's a lot to do in social, in mobile, specifically in multiplayer synchronous games. I think there's a lot more games to discover, to launch in everywhere. So for us, it's not the top priority at the moment.
I think it's our job to look into that space and to be always up to the top and look what's coming up there. I think the HoloLens video was very impressive. If this is really working that way, this will change the gaming landscape. But this has to be proven, like Google Glass had to be proven. Yeah. On the other side, I see smartwatches spreading now. When I look at my friends, I think this is something real, and this will come and give us new opportunities for great games.
My colleague executives and I, we keep looking at those. We keep track of industry evolutions and new products coming to the market. But for us, it's mostly staying on top of things. Plarium is not an early adopter, so Our strategy has always been to go into mature markets where we can understand our players and create games that best suit them. We don't experiment with new technologies where there is not enough knowledge base.
I think the market is premature. It will be wise to keep our eyes open, but I think that letting new entrepreneurs invest the market and check it out and maybe develop new things, and then to buy them, it will be much easier for us. We don't want to be defocused.
Okay, then something I've seen in a couple of talks yesterday actually. CPIs. Like we're all doing free to play, right? So we all have to do some user acquisition, and we all noticed that over the last couple of years it kind of goes up by 30-40% every year. Any specific challenges in doing user acquisition for multiplayer?
I must say that CPI war is not easy. It's not a secret that Facebook doesn't really help in that matter. And I can definitely say that your game cannot succeed if you're only planning on buying traffic. Cannot succeed. You need to work on viral elements as much as you can and try to understand how the acquisition market works. Not only buying traffic, but using a lot of ASO, SEO, whatever you can to try and to avoid the war of CPIs. Eventually, obviously, we'll have to buy some traffic in order to be ranked higher in the stores, in order to ignite liquidity in your games, in order to keep not going below the red line of liquidity. But planning of just buying traffic, you will not succeed. You will not succeed. Sometimes the CPI are much higher than lifetime value. It is a very dangerous path to go through. Invest your time thinking about viral elements, viral features, to bring organic traffic from outside of your game. Very important, and retention, of course.
Definitely, you need additional sources, and this also depends on the kind of multiplayer game you're having. Actually, we're developing a MOBA game called Shards of War, and for this kind of game, it's key to have a stable matchmaking pool. And when you have high CPIs, you always have to put in new people to keep the pool stable. This could be very hard, and this is a lesson we had to learn as well.
Thanks. So there are two aspects to this one. First of all, if you just look at direct CPI, it's not sustainable. And since you need to attribute some organic growth, right, you need to take into consideration that you will be getting organic users. The right way to allocate your marketing budget is not, at least in the first steps, not to count only ROI on your direct acquired users, but also increase your budget overall as your revenues grow. So just for an example, let's say you start with making $5,000 per month from your game. Invest $4,000 out of that into user acquisition, and then your revenues will grow, right? And you'll get even more organic users. So when you get to $10,000 per month, you need to grow to 8,000 or 7,000, whatever suits your whatever comfort zone you are in, and keep growing like that until you reach a point where you have to optimize between effective CPI, which is for all your acquired users, versus the revenues they bring. Another point to consider is that you need to play the platform's game, right? Featuring is important. While the effect of being featured has decreased a little bit in the last year, and you get less installs from the same spots that you used to get, it's still important to track what's important to the platforms and adapt. For example, for both platforms, it's important to keep the launch on the other platform as close to the first one. So if you can, try to plan to launch simultaneously on both platforms. You can do the soft launch and testing, whatever, but don't bring too much audience before you do the formal launch. And try launching on both platforms. And for example, for Apple, it's important to have parallax and other eye candy in your app. They want to really utilize the graphic power of their devices. So keep up with the platforms and what's important to them to increase your chances of the game being featured.
Yeah, I would separate this process into two. One being the launch of the game, and the other one being sustaining the game. I think during the launch of the game, simple LTV CPI calculation wouldn't make any sense because you need to pay a little bit more to bring in all the users at the same time to a multiplayer synchronous game, because matchmaking would be much more important in the beginning to have appropriate number of users that can play with each other at different levels of the game. Because if you don't input a lot of a wave of users, a huge wave of users at the beginning, then you will probably have lower retention, lower monetization, because people won't be able to find their matches. And I think this is a risk to take, that you probably will need to pay a lot more CPI than your actual LTV, single LTV is. But you will rely on the long-term retention, you will rely on the long lifetime of multiplayer games, and you don't need the content because users usually create the content. And that's the way we approach to the launch process of a multiplayer game. For sustaining the game, though, the approach should be different, in my opinion, is that if you already have a lot of users playing your game and you don't have any problems in matching people, then you can really make clever choices and go beyond what's your, you don't go beyond what's your LTV. And you can just acquire right users at a I don't know, reasonable amount of users every day. We believe in this approach when launching multiplayer synchronous games.
So I heard a couple of people mention virality, organic traffic. Do you think that multiplayer has an edge there over a single player game?
I think it's more simple for a multiplayer game to attract viral traffic if you are thinking smart about your community. Once a player installed the game and played, you need to follow him and find him wherever you can in his social networks. You must adjust yourself to the kind of the players. For example, a poker player will be much easier to find on Twitter, and a bingo player will be much easier to find on Facebook and Pinterest. Following the players and bringing them back for retention can help the viral growth of the game and the increase of the retention, of course. By investing a lot of efforts in the community, we can see that by bringing players back, they want to bring their friends to the game and play with them. And by allowing your users to play with their friends and not just anonymous Facebook friends, can obviously increase virality. And as I said before, giving them the ability to brag and to show their success, and even the ability to, it's not a nice word, to humiliate the other side that they are playing against. We can see it very nice on Begamon, which is a very competitive game, and obviously in poker. So giving the players the feeling of, in bingo we can say family, that they are playing with best friend, will draw them to bring their own friends to the game and then increase the game virality.
Yeah, I think multiplayer games have an edge by nature, being more social, because it's multiplayer, yeah? But you can encourage this by having special features or special bonuses. For example, in our mobile game, when you play in a group, you get a special XP bonus you only get when you play with your friends. Such little things can really help to drive the social viral part here.
Thanks. Okay, so virality is so important, right? Because you want users that you're not paying for. That's the way to grow. I'll give you an example. At one point, our BI team wanted to increase our invite a friend capabilities. So they worked on creating this new type of building in the player's base that is focused on delivering information to the player about their invite a friend activities. So they see all the friends they have in the game, all the friends they invited, and how they progress. And then we've created a set of achievements and rewards for these players, like quests on the side, to notify them of what we expect them to do and what they will get in return. And we improve the UI around it, etc. So the changes we've seen after implementing this entire approach was 500% increase in invites sent, 200% increase in friends joining based on invitations, and overall increase in participation in the game and re-engagement of dormant users.
Last year, I think one of our colleagues were using a term called social whale. I definitely agree with that. Like when I heard that we started thinking about them. The social whale is like a player that invites all of his friends, and just like he's a whale, not in terms of payments, but in terms of virality. Yeah. These are valuable players because they're usually very social in communicating with the other members of the community. And when they have a bad service, you're sure that they're gonna spread it all around. And if you give them a proper service, if you can kind of care them in a way that you should be, then it's a positive experience for them as well. And they invite their friends. They just bring in a lot of new people. And that's our approach at Peak. Is like we kind of make sure that these guys are properly serviced, like our payers, like our very engaged players. This is another dimension. And when you kind of give them a positive experience, they will probably spread the words about the game as well.
So maybe a bit of a Facebook-focused question. If we look at our statistics at GamePoint over the last couple of years, we see a steady decline in viral traffic versus organic traffic that tends to come from stuff like features or suggested games. Are you seeing the same thing, and how are you responding? Because it kind of forces you to think in other ways about the viral loops that were very, very successful a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I can start a little bit. I think it's about the Facebook's policy as well, that they're kind of cutting up the kind of spammy viral actions within the platform. I think the alternatives would be using other networks as well, because according to your game, your audience might be in Twitter, might be in Instagram, and you need to give them a proper chance to show their, in-game progress as well. In many of our games, we have the screenshot mechanism that you can just take a screenshot and kind of forward it to Instagram, or just tweet about a certain thing that has happened in the game. I think they work together best at their best performance.
Yeah, I think viral features are getting old or being renewed. Like 5 years ago, with the gift function stuff, you could work very good and viral. And today, everybody's annoyed if he gets Facebook gifts and stuff like this. So you have to go with the time and look what the people accept, and perhaps be creative and find new ways to talk to them and give your content to them.
I think viral traffic is going to be a big problem in the future. Probably most of you are familiar with the graph 2 of Facebook that is going to be a big hurt to viral traffic. And obviously the gaming area is getting very crowded. We have a lot of competition out there, and we are competing on the same players. So you must understand that you must create new, exciting features in your games, and maybe try to think about viral traffic in a different way. Don't go for the traditional sharing stuff in Facebook, and think about other platforms like WhatsApp or whatever gonna come up. Go that way. I think viral traffic, as we know it today, is going to have a big decline.
Yeah, and especially in quality as well. We have to go to meaningful viral traffic, not for mass viral traffic, more meaningful. This will work in the future as well. Whenever it's meaningful, people will accept it.
Yeah, and I think, Michael, that Facebook is acknowledging what you just said, because like Zor mentioned, the API 2, so the invitable friends is something that's only right now, and be even stricter later on, be available for games that have a presence on Canvas, on web. And what it does is selects for you or recommends the friends that are most likely to join your game. But what we've come to realize that for an each game like ours, when you present the entire list of friends of a user, what comes back is like 7 or 8 friends that Facebook thinks are most likely to join the game, which is not a lot. So the days of having just mark all of your friends, send everyone an invitation to the game are over, and now it's about quality, but I think we're going to miss the quantity as well.
Retention. So we did acquisition, right? Then you need to retain a user. Do you think that having a multiplayer game naturally gives you better retention?
Absolutely. So it's often not about the game. It's more about what you do with your friends, with your co-players, cooperation. And at the beginning I said I started with World of Warcraft again, and I did this great reactivation campaign, and this was about exactly this. Yeah, it reminded me by the time years ago when I was a student and played a lot with my friends and had some great events and great things happened there, and this all came back. This feeling, and I wanted to have this again, so I started anew. And this is only multiplayer games can achieve, I think.
It's a tricky question, because let's say that it's right, and multiplayer games do have an advantage over a single player game. But you have a great idea for a single player game. Would you just discard it because being multiplayer would be good? That would be better? Probably not. I do think that having multiplayer environment helps you re-engage players, because they're naturally interacting with other players in the game, and so your offline and direct virality and word of mouth come into play. But multiplayer environments are also naturally harder to balance, and you, depending on the game, you're open to fraud and other problems. And in a way, it kind of resembles the challenge of switching between premium and free-to-play games. You can make the change, but you need to be prepared for the challenges it brings with it. And being able to address new types of support when a player is being hassled by another player does not happen in single-player games, or a single player with a layer of multiplayer like you have in King's games, which are not multiplayer by nature, but you do have a layer of interplayer interaction between players, right?
For multiplayer games, I think our advantage is we don't have this aggressive push for creating content like the other casual players, because when you're building up a game like a level progress-based game, you always have the constant pressure on you that you need to create new levels, more levels, different concepts, and so. I think the advantage of multiplayer in this case is that the user generates the content. So as long as, but this also has some downs as well, because complexity of the infrastructure, complexity of the cheating, abusing the rules and stuff like that, it's quite important for us. So there's no content war, there's not really like a push for content creation, but you need to make sure that no one cheats, that the gameplay arena is as healthy as possible, and you have a proper infrastructure. I think it has ups and downs. It's not as clear as yes, it's great, I would say.
I must say a few words about cheaters, if I may. So cheaters can be one of the reasons for low retention. Players can complain about cheaters and can go to the fan pages and stuff and see how many people complain about cheaters and say, okay, so there are cheaters in the game, I won't play here. In a lot of games, finding the cheaters and banning them from the game, but the cheaters, as cheaters, they come back and cheat on another profile name. So we have decided to take a different approach. We find the cheaters, we know that they cheat because we check the bankroll and stuff, and we're isolating them. We are marking them as cheater in the system, and they can only play with other cheaters. So we're not kicking them out of the game, so they don't create another user and they don't come and cheat on another name. So we have made like a restricted area of cheaters, and it's quite enjoyable to look at the stats, because they try to cheat on yes, the smarter cheater wins. So once we've done that, we can see a very big drop in the complaints about cheaters in the game. Obviously, haters hate. But and once we've done that, the retention increased because it's more nice to play. It's more you don't meet with the bad people in the game. So that's a good tip that we can give you. And it's much easier for multiplayer game to do retention. As I said, follow your players in the social networks and bring them back.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because I think Erdem mentioned that your players are your content, right? Which helps with retention, but at the same time you lose some control over what that content is, because it's people, so they misbehave. How do you other guys handle that?
Yeah, so it's part of the game. There's a thin line between cheating, abusing, exploiting. they can develop some kind of meta game. So when I look at Destiny from Bungie at the moment, what's going on there in terms of exploiting, so the content of the game is very thin, but people really have fun in exploiting the game, finding new ways to beat the bosses there and stuff like this. So some kind of meta game content has developed there, and if they would ban this instantly, they would destroy part of the community here. On the other side, there's a huge risk by letting this all go. We had this in one of our games where we had bot users with very strong, good bots, and we ignored it at first, and in the end we lost a lot of revenue and people stopped playing because we ignored this for such a long time, and we had to make a huge campaign and put a lot of effort in clearing the situation, fighting against the bots, having a lot of information for the players that it's now safe and they can come back and stuff like this. So ignoring this is complicated as well. So it's a thin line here.
Yeah, so we saw something of the opposite side. We made a lot of effort to automatically identify bots in our system. Usually people multi-account to accumulate resources and then trade it between themselves. The first step we did was to lock the ratio of trading so they can't make too much money out of that. Not real money, just in-game. But at one point, I remember I was looking at the charts, internal charts on our active users, and I saw a big drop across all games in one day, a few days ago. Not this ago, but when I was looking. And I called in to check what's happened, and they said, yeah, we just closed a few 100,000 accounts. I said, really? Wow, that must have been so bad. And said, no, we only lost 0.1% of revenues. So you need to keep in mind that these accounts were multiple accounts that all they did all day long was farming. We were able to identify them and close them. So we saw a small drop in the active users, but revenues almost did not change.
Yeah, for us, I think we took the pretty much similar approach of banning potentially abusing users because we didn't want to take risk of like false positives are always better for us because banning a potentially abusing user is a lot more healthy for your game than just keeping a suspicious one. But for that, we always have the reporting interfaces that we constantly check the economy of the game. So, because usually a mass cheating, an abused bug or something like that in the game results in an unexpected flow of chips or flow of game economy, so that you can just easily detect an additional weirdness in your charts. But I really like the approach of the Pirate Bay thing, like just putting all the cheaters at the same place. That might work as well.
Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left. We did acquisition, we did retention, we talked about cheaters a bit. Let's talk money. So how do you monetize?
I can say that our games are highly segmented. We have divided our players into, 20 and above groups, approaching each group in a different way, doing a lot of psychological stuff to try to monetize more, and some of them work and some of them don't, and we are optimizing as we go. It's quite easy on a multiplayer game because it is more social, and players do want to go and increase their level and engagement in the game, and you can work with it in order to monetize players better if you can understand their needs. It took us some time, a lot of testing, A/B testing, a lot of optimization, and eventually we have created a few segments of groups that we can see players are moving between groups, moving forward and sometimes backwards. And it is important to allow the players to go backwards in terms of monetization, and also giving the ability to go back the way as you want to play. And in PvP, it's even more simpler because a player will always want to feel that he's progressing and he's getting better in the game, and he would like to play on higher levels and in Begam on higher boards, which higher boards cost a lot of money, and the ability to play as you feel as a player. If I feel for a good player, I would like to play with other good players, allow us to increase monetization. again, by deep segmentation.
Yeah, exactly. Know your audience. There's no silver bullet for monetization. You have to find out what your audience accepts and likes. And this can differ from audience to audience. On the one side of the spectrum, you have perhaps casual users, which you can sell nearly everything. On the other side, you have hardcore, highly competitive esports user, which wouldn't accept buying a vanity T-shirt because it's red and you can be seen earlier in the game or something like this. So know your audience and what is pay to win for them and what do they accept and what not, and that's the key here.
All right. So the question was, how do we monetize, right? Very well.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'll give you an example. For us, the most active players are those that participate in a clan. They stay much longer in the game, a larger percentage of them enjoy the game and convert into paying users. So we wanted to increase the amount of players participating in a clan. Now we identified a bottleneck because you would go through a very long list of available clans and you would apply to them. And what would happen is your applications, and imagine that each clan has a few tens of people, so they have a lot of requests coming in. And there was a big bottleneck because the request wasn't being taken care of. So what we've done is introduce something we call a clan academy, where early players are being offered to join, and they learn about basic interactions in a clan, what they can expect, and how they're going to interact with other players. And during the process, they're automatically being applied to the most suitable clan available for them. What this did is 150% increase in people joining a clan. We also saw that early players that joined the clan academy had the same KPIs as veteran players that were participating in a clan. So it was very successful in that sense. And of course, it contributed to our monetization.
For our games, most of them are competitive games. So like many of our competitors prefer putting ads inside the game. We don't do that because in competitive games, if you risk and popping up ad like in somewhere, if there's even a slight delay of 1 second, like it just pops up in a place where a user needs to act very fast. They need to play, they need to put their card, they need to, I don't know, their turn has come already. So we don't risk that. We only use very small amount of ads in just some of our games. Then they're opt-in most of the time. So most of the revenue depends on in-app purchases, like probably many of my colleagues would do as well. The triggering purchasing behavior would be probably competition. The rankings table, like being in there, is quite popular among our players. So once you're there, you don't want to lose your status. So you kind of, defeat your competitors, try to get more chips and stuff like that. I think that triggers a lot of the purchasing behavior.
If I may say, I don't like using ads. I know it's bad for the revenues. I know we can make a lot of money, but I think ads are hurting user experience. I think the industry personally thinking that the industry is going not a good way in terms of ads. We are hopefully all gamers, and we understand the pain of playing and then seeing an ad that hurts your experience. But unfortunately, we're here for the P&L, and we need to make money. So placing the ads where it won't interfere with the game experience. That's my insights. And if you ask about doing money, is quite a simple equation. Just a user needs to play more time in the game, and as he plays more, he spends more, and as he spends more, you want to go back to his status, and he will buy again. People buy in order to become higher in status. People even buy just to buy. We have Leonard talk about leaderboard. We have a few players in the leaderboard that they play, but at the end of the day, they buy in hundreds of dollars in order to be number one. Even if they have millions of chips, they still buy. So by talking about segmentation, you need to understand your crowd, you understand your players, and approach each one of them in a specific way that will make him monetize.
I think when it comes to ads, this depends on the theme of the game. Yeah, I don't want to see vacuum cleaner spots in a medieval raiding game or something like this. Yeah, but when it fits to the theme, ads are okay. In one of our farming games, we have a cinema, and the players can go there and see some ads and get some reward for this, and this is okay. This is working out, and they accept it. They like it in the end. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Do you have time for couple of audience questions? Anyone? Don't be shy.
The first one is shy, so we can start with the second one.
Hi, okay, yeah, it's working. Just one question. What advice would you give an indie developer who thinks about developing his first multiplayer game?
A bit more information.
Yeah, I mean most indies don't do multiplayer because they think it's too hard. So would you tell them like start with like multiplayer features like high scores, leaderboards, or would you tell them okay, really start with a hardcore multiplayer game?
Start with the game you're most passionate about that you think will succeed. That's the most important thing. You need to create a great game. If the game that you believe is the best you can create happens to be a multiplayer game, then do everything you can to create the best experience for that multiplayer game. Having said that, it all depends on the genre, right? And you need to roll out to plan out your feature set such that you will start with those that give players let's define it as amount of joy and engagement, the features that give your players the largest amount of engagement you can find out of the feature set that you want to develop eventually, and move on from there. So start with the essentials and move on to the nice to haves.
Look what kind of game you're building for what audience. This sounds silly, but if you have a highly competitive game with a lot of fighting or stuff like this for a more female audience, this may not work out so good. Yeah. So this depends. Perhaps you find something there, but you really have to look what the audience wants to play in that way.
Ninja Hello Kitty.
Ninja Hello Kitty sounds great.
And maybe if I can add something myself, keep in mind the open bar problem. If you have a multiplayer game, you're probably going to be dependent on having people to play with, and that's a challenge. So keep that in mind. Yeah.
Just small tip. When doing a multiplayer game, there's a big risk because there is a red line of liquidity. Player wouldn't like to come to a multiplayer game and be alone in the room. Even with another one and maybe 3 or 4 or 5, sometimes it's just not interesting. So that's a big challenge in multiplayer. And as an indie developer, I advise you to don't be shy and ask for help and advices and find a good publisher because it's a war out there.
Hi. So it sounds like you guys have a lot of experience in Facebook games, and do you find any replacement for Facebook in mobile? Like there's Game Center now, but Game Center doesn't really work well, and there's Google Play, but it also doesn't work well. So what can you recommend as a game developer to use instead of Facebook or anything like that?
Well, for ourselves, I think Facebook is still, even if it's declining in many senses, I think it's still by far the greatest way to interact with other people. I wouldn't really say the platforms, Game Center and Google Play Center is there yet. And in the short term, it might be another social network, just like, I don't know, Twitter or Instagram, but I really don't see it as a big thing coming in the short term.
Hi, I'm Elena Arponen from Tribe Studios. So we are building multiplayer games where the story and the characters are a lot in the focus. And I don't know actually many examples of multiplayers where that is the case, where it's not so much about the fighting and competitive battle. So can you name any examples of multiplayer where the story would be in a focus? Just curious if you know any.
That's a good question. I think I cannot think of examples now, but I can say that every multiplayer game must have a story. The narrative is very important. For me as a gamer, I would like to understand why am I playing, and just not just pushing my fingers on the screen. So I think the story is very important, but I think in multiplayer games, once you've heard the story, the game is totally different. I cannot think of example now, maybe by.
The closer you get to the RPG genre, the more story you get, basically. So you have puzzle RPG, it has a bit of a story. You get card collection RPGs, more story, and then true RPGs have a lot of story on them because you just go from quest to quest and the story prolongs. Some would argue that a game like Clash of Clans has a narrative. I don't think. It has a great sense of humor, but there's no narrative, like you just landed in that village. Right? So it's not absolutely necessary, but for some genres it's more important than others.
Yeah, I think you're very unique with your approach there. I cannot remember another game as well. As far as I know, the longer the player plays a multiplayer game, the social things and social happenings and the gameplay itself is more the important thing for the player, and the narrative turns back and turns down for them. So like not reading quests anymore and stuff like this because you're too lazy. So it's hard, but let's see what you have there.
Okay, I think we're done. Thanks everyone. If you have any questions for the panelists, they might stick around for a bit.